Welcome to the NonProfit Voice, a podcast series brought to you by NonProfit Pro, the go-to resource for nonprofit management and strategy. In each episode, we're going to sit down with leaders of nonprofit organizations, the people responsible for paving the way for our sector, along with key technology strategy partners who are transforming our industry. Here at the NonProfit Voice, we'll have refreshing conversations in which we will all learn more about the convergence of nonprofit and technology. Be sure to follow us on social media and visit our website to find more episodes of the NonProfit Voice. And you can download all of the NonProfit Voice episodes on iTunes, Google Play, or Spotify. We will have all the links down below. Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the NonProfit Voice. I'm Nhu Te, Editor-in-Chief of NonProfit Pro, and I'll be your host for today's episode. And as always, thank you so much for joining us today. So we've got some exciting content on the agenda today, but first I want to introduce our guests for today's show. So please join me in welcoming David Neeman, founder and chairman of the Loyalty Foundation, along with Whit and Colin Hunter of Betterworld. Whit is a co-founder and CEO, and Colin is a co-founder and head of strategy and growth. Hey guys, thanks so much for joining me today. How are you guys doing?
Great. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, great to be here.
Awesome. So happy to hear it. So before we jump into today's topic, I usually start by getting our audience more acquainted with our guests. So David, I'll have you go first. Can you tell me and the audience a little bit more about yourself and about the Loyalty Foundation?
Yeah, my name is David Neeman. I started the Loyalty Foundation in 2019 before the pandemic because we felt as an organization that technology is really the great equalizer in the future. And all children, irrespective of race, gender, or socioeconomic status, needs to have access to technology so that they can really play the part in the future. I was a prosecutor at the Manhattan DA's office for 10 years. And kind of my experiences working there, as well as working at a tech company afterwards, really sort of opened my eyes to the importance of hope, and also of a kind of a direct, efficient path to get there. So the Loyalty Foundation has always focused on getting technology to underserved communities. During COVID, we have delivered hundreds of computers to communities all over the country, including Flint, Michigan, Birmingham, Alabama, Newark, New Jersey, Yonkers, just to name a few. And we really just follow up with the delivery of technology, usually in the form of a refurbished Chromebook. And then we follow up with our educational offerings to make sure the children are able to use it and access their educational opportunities, as well as tech education when that's applicable. And then we also follow through with mentorship so that we can sort of bridge the gap and really attack digital equity by showing the importance of technology in the future.
Fantastic. And Whit and Colin, please share more about, yourselves and Betterworld.
Yeah. So Whit here. So Colin and I have been serial entrepreneurs and sort of infatuated with building and growing businesses for a long time. When I was at the University of Virginia as an undergraduate, I wrote my thesis on new ways for businesses to serve the common good. What would it mean to do well and do good as a for-profit enterprise? And thinking through, those questions, the outlines of Betterworld were born. So Colin and I and one other co-founder started a company called Betterworld, aimed to serve the nonprofit space through free fundraising tools that make their life easier and save them a bunch of time. That was about 7 years ago, and we've been grinding it out, building this platform, and it's been a real joy to be working together on this.
Fantastic. All right, so I've invited everyone on the podcast today to talk a little bit about crowdfunding. We're going to talk about technology and, of course, fundraising strategy. But we have a lot to talk about, so let's just get into my first question. I kind of want to get started with the basics here and We're going to talk about a little bit about crowdfunding, but before we get into that, can we talk about what crowdfunding really is and how nonprofits can leverage it for their fundraising?
Yeah, great. I'll kick off here. Crowdfunding, it's become a term that's a lot more popular in the nonprofit space. And I think some people, when you hear crowdfunding, they'll think of an individual, and it's a friend that they know that is going online and they're raising money from their community. And but crowdfunding is actually a really important tool for nonprofits as well. And we see nonprofits of all sizes utilize crowdfunding as part of their strategy of engagement and raising money for initiatives. And I think the common theme between that crowdfunding as an individual and crowdfunding as a nonprofit is that you are engaging your community around one central objective. Usually it's, if you think about typical fundraising as supporting the mission more broadly, crowdfunding drives a certain amount of specificity. You could be raising money for a new well, or to buy a bus for a school, or to buy a whole bunch of laptops, in David's case that he's talked about. And so at its core, crowdfunding always has a specific goal that's clearly communicated to your community. And it also invites your community more broadly into that goal and to help make it happen in a defined period of time.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent definition of crowdfunding. And really, it came into prominence around GoFundMe, which was doing a lot of the personal crowdfunding, but also even places like Kickstarter and Indiegogo, which were doing sort of project-based crowdfunding. We've seen it. The majority of nonprofit crowdfunding is in donation campaigns, sort of specifically, again, trying to raise X $1,000 for one specific project. But there's probably a way to think about crowdfunding more broadly with these project-specific campaigns that can include other styles of accepting donations, like ticketing or auctions or raffles or other means of raising funds outside of just a specific, requesting a donation.
Excuse me. Personally, and I guess on behalf of the Loyalty Foundation itself, these types of fundraisers have been integral to our, achieving our mission, which is very, very, it's very far in the future. We're pushing towards digital equity, and there's a long, long road to get to that path. I mean, I was just on the phone today with a woman in Yonkers, where we're supporting an organization there where we're getting computers to them, and she wanted to move to another community, into Mount Vernon, that also has a need. By the one thing we have found is the need for computers is everywhere. It's a problem. It's rampant, and it affects so many communities across the country. And what we're actually coming up with, and how we found it to be a very relatively successful means to raise funds, is that we focus on those communities themselves. We find out what the need is, and we're able to package it to the community itself that surrounds this need. For example, we had a group of mothers, wonderful, wonderful women here in New York City, who wanted to raise money to get computers to kids in New York City, and we were able really to tap into their power and their collective will, and they were able to, we packaged it through Betterworld as the Loyalty Foundation, in collaboration with these mothers, right? Specifically to raise money to get kids computers in New York City. And they really, really, really were specific. They wanted to be in New York City. And we were able to raise $30,000 in 2 weeks. And what was so outstanding about that experience was we made each other stronger, and because they were trying to raise money by themselves, right? And people wanted to give, but they weren't giving in the way that when they paired with an organization like ours, we gave each other legitimacy, right? We were like a level above either just going to the website or just an individual reaching out to try to help in need. Somehow this convergence of these two motivations and the two sort of entities themselves giving each other power is what created such a successful campaign. So what I think, when you can personalize the message, there's a lot of people who care, and they care a lot, and they want to give, but they want to make sure they're giving to a place that is really going to take what they are given and do great things with it. And I think a combination of the human element of a movement of such makes the whole process and the journey really more gratifying for everyone, and really more successful.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's certainly a powerful tool to have a nonprofit should have in their back pocket, especially because it's leveraging their kind of most important asset, which is a supporter's passion and motivations and enthusiasm for the nonprofit's mission. But I kind of want to dive into, crowdfunding and peer-to-peer sound pretty similar. So Colin or Whit, can you break down the differences between the two?
Yeah, I'll take the first stab at this, because there is a lot of overlap. There's a lot of overlap in the how of these campaigns, and we'll get into that in a moment. I think that the easiest way to differentiate crowdfunding and peer-to-peer is a technical one. What's generally known as peer-to-peer fundraising, you have individuals that have their own individual fundraising page. Colin has his page, Whit has his page, David has his page, and we all send our own individual page out to our friends, peer-to-peer. As opposed to crowdfunding, which is generally one central page that we all direct people to. But the overlap is that any successful crowdfunding campaign leverages people sharing the page with their friends. It leverages community. It leverages, people doing the exact same thing they would be doing in peer-to-peer, which is having conversation with their friends, getting them involved, posting on social media. But the only difference with crowdfunding is that it's going to one central place rather than going to people's individual pages first.
Awesome. Colin, did you have anything to add?
I think Whit hit the nail on the head. It really comes down to, yes, who is controlling, who's driving the fundraising initiative. Both are really effective strategies, and we see a number of the nonprofits on our platform utilize both angles. I think with peer-to-peer, it's all about how do you equip your community and your advocates to go out and fundraise on your behalf. And when you do that, that can really help increase your reach because you're broadening your network, but you also lose a bit of control over messaging and tactics. Whereas with crowdfunding, you retain some of that control. The messaging is coming from a central location, but it's harder to amplify the reach because you're doing it centrally.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, actually. I think that is something that, obviously nonprofits have to be a little careful about, right? Because people have great intentions, and sometimes they have great enthusiasm, and people will connect to your mission for different reasons. And when there are individuals out there, it's hard to control what is being said sometimes, and I think also I think in our experience, and I would say that I would find that the crowdfunding, even the word itself, right, it's more of like a movement, right? And movements are very, very powerful. So individuals that are going peer to peer, that network or that sort of expansion is probably more limited than groups coming to a specific location. So I think nonprofits, especially raising money in challenging times like this, have to be very, very careful, right, and thoughtful about how they approach these types of things. It's just there's so many different ways to get to the end result, and I don't think there really are particularly many just one right answer. It's a combination of good strategy, a little bit of luck, and perseverance.
Yeah, clearly technology, offers a world of possibilities for nonprofits. So I want to kind of talk about the ways that the ways that nonprofits can use technology in their fundraising campaigns. Colin or Whit, like, can you provide some examples of how nonprofits are leveraging technology to kind of boost their fundraising campaigns and just, get more interest and get more donors and get more dollars?
Absolutely. Yeah, having a good understanding of technology and utilizing it in your fundraising strategy is it's not a nice to have. It's honestly a need to have in our current society. And that's one of our goals. Is as David was saying, one of our goals that our team works tirelessly for is how do we make it easy for our nonprofit partners out there to utilize technology, knowing that they may not have a CTO on their staff, or they may not even be very well versed in kind of latest tech trends. If we can build a platform and make it easy to take advantage of technology and to leverage it, then we've done our job. Technology really does a few things for nonprofits. It simplifies and expands your communication. It improves automation, and it broadens your reach. And a few examples of each of those, in the communication front, when you launch any sort of campaign, whether it's a crowdfunding campaign or an online auction, or you're promoting an event that you have coming up, either digital or in person, you need to get the word out there. And so being able to frequently communicate and to segment who you're communicating to follow up, and even when your event is live, to kind of share various items or share progress, and to keep people engaged, is paramount to being able to drive a successful campaign. But there's also the unglamorous side of communication, and technology just helps drive efficiency there. So, for example, our platform does automated receipts. So if you've won an item in an online auction, we've kind of taken the process out of having to manually send out receipts to all of your donors with the tax ID number and all the information that they would need. The system does it automatically. And so there are elements of communication that can not only drive more donor engagement with communication, but can also drive more efficiency for the nonprofit. I think we see that too on the automation front. This is not just true of our platform, but we see it more frequently now, that the interconnectedness of tools makes both the donor experience much better, and also saves time and headache for the nonprofit or whoever the administrator is of the campaign. One example of that is, we're in this interesting time right now where there are plenty of digital events happening. People are already also starting to plan selectively live events. And using our ticketing tool, someone can promote their digital event or their live event. People will buy tickets for that. And once they've purchased a ticket on our platform, now they're automatically pre-registered for any other campaign, whether that's a crowdfunding campaign or an online auction or a giveaway or anything else. They don't have to enter their information again. And so, any sort of gain around efficiency and automation saves a nonprofit time. And something that we talk about a lot internally is the two most precious commodities for a nonprofit is time and money. And so if we can help save them time and help them raise more money, more effectively and efficiently, then they're ultimately going to be able to carry out their mission that much better. I think that the third piece around technology is broadening your reach. And this is something that many nonprofits have learned even more just by necessity over the past year. There are some organizations, like David's, where they have a big reach and they're used to that. But there are others that have been local and they've relied on just in-person local events. And when that is gone and you have to, and as many have over the past year, you have to engage an audience digitally. By using technology effectively, you can actually increase by orders of magnitude the number of people that you can reach and that can engage with your campaign. And we're seeing that all over the place. And something that we hear frequently now is the lessons that people have learned throughout COVID and fundraising in a pandemic, are changing how they're thinking about fundraising in the future. That even as you plan for live events, being able to, again, utilize technology to allow people that don't live in that city or aren't able to make it to that event, still allowing them to engage and to participate is only going to deepen your engagement with your base and increase the potential for what you're able to raise.
Yeah, very well said. Moving forward out of this, hopefully, post-pandemic phase, as more people get vaccinated, one of the big things we're talking about here in NonProfit Pro is that, people are craving to get back in person and interact with people face to face. But I think that virtual aspect will continue to have to be a standard for nonprofits, because now your supporters, your donors, they're getting used to it, they're getting accustomed to it. And for those who don't live locally, or if they can't make it, or if there's a health concern, or if there's like a money concern, there's still a way to participate with the event. So I think that's a really great point, Whit. David, your premise at the organization is technology. Technology is your mission. It's what you guys are really focused on. So, how are you guys using technology to leverage your fundraising?
Yeah, I mean, our premise is that technology is the great equalizer. And I also think we're a little bit of a disruptor in sort of the world of philanthropy, and technology is a critical component of it. When we started, we really were very, very small and very young. We didn't have a lot of anything. And, like anything, you start getting people on your team, right? And technology is a critical part to get people into the mission. Everything that we do, we can communicate so much faster and so much easier through technology. And fundraising, I mean, it's funny if you think about it. I mean, we existed long before. We don't do any mailing or anything, right? It's bad for the environment. It's costly. It's sort of like, it's kind of, there are still organizations that do it, and I imagine that they will do it until it really doesn't make financial sense anymore. But technology allows us to be anywhere anyone is, right? As long as we can sort of synthesize our message in a palatable amount, there's a lot of, what I think technology allows us to be everywhere. The problem is it allows everyone to be everywhere. So, you can just see the streams and streams of content that is out there, and we're all trying to kind of penetrate it and to connect to the individual behind the screen. So the ability to use and to be out there and to be potentially in everyone's home, right? If you can get there, technology can really give you access to any human being if you can just somehow get through the sort of the bouncer, if every person's individual behaviors and taste. So the key component, I think, and we're still learning every day and adapting and learning and doing the best we can while still doing our programming. I mean, most of our fundraising, we have put, a shockingly low effort into fundraising, not because we don't think it's important, it's just we just haven't had time. We were on this mission to get as many computers to all these kids whose education had been cut short. And really our fundraising had been me whale fishing, out there just trying to get in front of people, just trying to get somebody to give us money. Right. And it was effective and it's worked because it was like an emergency situation and time. But now with the technology, it's like it's all about packaging it in the right way, communicating it in such a way directly to the receiver in the way they want to hear it. And not everybody wants to hear the messages in the same way. And I think particularly our mission at the Loyalty Foundation is really, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter where you sit on the political spectrum. It doesn't really matter where you are in your thought process. Virtually every person believes that kids need to have an opportunity, especially kids who, start with very little, like the underserved communities in this country and in this world for that matter. Everyone, I think, universally is like all kids should have an opportunity to succeed. So now we have a need that's stretched out, and we believe we have there's a large group that wants to donate, right? But they just don't know where, because it's not just enough to care. You have to have an efficient and thoughtful plan to achieve it. So what we try to demonstrate is that the need, like we have to, in a short amount of time, to get to as many people as possible, we have to package in that information who we are, why it's important, why we're credible, and what exactly is going to happen with your money. And so we focused a great deal, and all of our stuff is really focused on project-based things so people can actually see where their money is going. And technology is great because it's amazing. It gives us this incredible power to try to reach all these people, but it has to be dialed in at exactly the right amount. And that is what the complicated part is, but that's okay. It's okay that it is complicated and that you're fighting for the voice and the time of all these people, but it's just the fact that you can get there, right? Like there is a way. If you can put it together in the right way, technology makes it possible to reach the masses.
Great. And I kind of want to dive into that a little bit more, David, on what you said about kind of like packaging your mission. I want to talk about the details of your marketing strategy. What are some creative or maybe unique ways you guys are marketing or, displaying your content on your fundraising campaigns to try to get potentially more supporters or supporters to donate again?
Yeah. So I am figuring that out right now. It's funny that you're saying that. It's just like really this whole the Loyalty Foundation, from beginning to where we are now, we are where I thought we would be 5 years from now. Like we have grown so fast and so quickly. And I have to say a lot of it has to be with going with the flow, right? We didn't do computers pre-pandemic. We were focusing only on education. And then one of our kids in one of our educational programs didn't have a computer. And then I went and got him a computer and found that we were able to purchase these refurbished Chromebooks for like $100. And when I was able to find that there was a market to do it, we adapted, and then we launched our Devices for All program, which basically brought us to all these places across the country, and our computers were finding their hands into kids who were one child who was in a domestic violence shelter who was able to continue their teletherapy. So when all that became clear to me, that it was greater than school. Right. Another one of our students has written an amazing rap. Right. And another one is creative writing. Maria from Newark, whose education was cut short because she left Guatemala, was ecstatic because she was going to expand on her creative writing. So like the technology piece opens up so many doors. So, we got, our donors, our generous donors, and how do we keep re-engaging with them? And I think we have found, and we're still tweaking the dial every day, right? And there's only a certain amount of time you can spend, you have in a day, right? And so obviously now we're putting a lot of effort into figuring out how is the best way to fundraise and leverage the tools. But I have found that the best ways that we have done so is by really engaging a community. Like what we're doing in Newark right now is very exciting to me, because we are like galvanizing the community. We are really creating a little bit of a movement where it started with the computers, and now it's in this mentorship. And on Monday, we're going to be giving out, in coordination with the Newark public school system, computers to kids in Newark, right? And that is super exciting. And I think that if we can somehow, and we're actually figuring it out right now, is if we can sort of document the arc of the story, right? And we can sort of bring people through the process with at the end result being a specific individual whose personal story is compelling, is I think the way that we are hoping to unlock even more dollars to our donations, to our cause, to our mission, to our hopeful eventuality.
Fantastic. Colin or Whit, did you have anything to add? I think David really did a great job there.
Yeah, I was just thinking that I can certainly speak on some specifics of marketing, but I thought David's approach around storytelling, I think is kind of the powerful underpinning to any good marketing or outreach. So I'll jump in a little bit on some marketing tactics, but I do that's worth re-listening to. Just I thought that was really, really good.
Thank you.
As far as specific marketing or tactics of getting the word out, it's a lot of basic blocking and tackling. It's social media, it's email, it's reaching out to local news media, because they're always looking for good stories. It's reaching out to affinity blogs. If you're doing something in education, what are the blogs? Who's covering this right now? How can we find other communities of people that might not have heard of what we're doing? They might be interested to learn more. And it's doing this yourself, as the leader of the nonprofit or the director of the campaign. But it's also engaging your donors and asking them to make these outreach and to do this communication as well. Asking them to share on social media, asking them to reach out to their friends. The other component of this is around, one of the points that you touched on earlier was around frequency of communication, and how does one re-engage donors, and how do you stay top of mind without, there's a limited number of times that one can be reached out to in a time of by day. An interesting thing to consider here is around viewing donors holistically as individuals. One of the premises that we've always found is that it's easy to look at donors as a checkbook, as people that are that can provide a certain amount of money. But there's clearly a lot more to, donors are individuals. They have skills, they have experiences, they have things they would be able to offer. And reaching out to people for some of these other talents and assets is a way to increase the frequency, but also the meaningfulness of some of those communications. Colin actually might be able to jump in a little bit on some of the early parts about his experience as a donor, but being able to be Colin, why don't you actually jump in on some of the early Betterworld stuff and the Bachelor Week stories there?
Yeah, I mean, just a very personal example. When I was getting married, I actually found a place to do my bachelor party through a charity auction on our platform. And I think some of the benefits of it is where I was in life. I wouldn't have been able to afford this place, nor would my groomsmen, if we were just doing it on our own. And so it really was kind of creating this win-win scenario where 100% of our funds that we used to get the place went to charity. The owners of the home weren't using the home, and so it was easy for them to donate it. So everyone felt like they were doing good, and even that experience individually made me want to talk about it. And clearly, I'm a part of a Betterworld, but we always try to view things through the eyes of a donor and experience things that way as well. And I think the more, to Whit's point and to David's point, the more we can share authentic stories and experiences, mission related or donor related, and testimonials, I think that helps get the word out, and it helps keeps people engaged.
I couldn't agree more. And to just talk about marketing a little more, I just want to briefly graze over, obviously when donors or potential supporters see a campaign, whether it's online or it's, through mail, copy and visuals are the thing that really pop out to them and get their attention. So what are some things, David, do you have any recommendations on some best practices to keep in mind when designing visuals?
I would say I'm a big fan of the KISS system, right? Keep it simple, stupid. I think people have a tendency to do too much, right? I really like, and when they do too much, I think authenticity is really what everybody wants. They just want something authentic, right? And I think we try to force things too much a little bit. We have a tendency to overwork them. And I find that's what resonates with me. I also find that actually doing things is the most important thing. Like I don't like hearing about people talking about stuff. I like them actually doing things. So if it's authentic and it's connected to actually something being done, to me that is the best. By the way, I that's what I like, and I, I sometimes am at odds with other people because I'm really sort of laser focused on that. And I also think you gotta connect with the power of people, right? Like I think back to that powerful group of moms in New York City, right? I don't think what made that work so well, right? And by the way, not all of our things were that powerful, right? Like, I think you got to take a lot of shots. Some work out tremendously, some don't, but you just got to keep moving. So you really just got to keep trying things.
As far as a copy and visual perspective, we're big believers that aesthetics matter. We try to create beautiful tools that are elegant and easy to use. And the reason for this, it's not just sort of satisfying our own, design ideals. It's that donors are, in every other area of their life, they are interacting with elegant design and great copy and images, because that's what sells on Amazon or on Uber or on Etsy. People are used to, if 99% of the communication that somebody is taking in is written by professional marketers and has beautiful images, it's really important that the communication that they're hearing about giving or an auction or an online raffle or event at least makes an effort towards those ends of clear imagery and concise copy. Clearly, it doesn't have to be perfect, but we're a big believer in intentionality, in high resolution images, and we try to make this really easy with automatically cropped images and sort of suggestions on copy, and we try to make that simple. But the best campaigns, we see thousands and thousands of auctions a year on Betterworld, as well as a number of other campaigns. But one of the biggest indicators of, is an auction going to be successful, is going to break their fundraising goals, is, did the team take the time to get nice images and take the time to write fun copy? Because that's what, story aside, people are consumers too, and that's what resonates.
So I have one more question for each of you guys, but it can be a hard question depending on how you feel. We've talked about it a lot today, and then if there's one piece of advice you would give to nonprofits who are listening today, what would it be? I'll start with you, David.
I would say the one piece of advice that I would give is go. Just keep going, right? And really be ready to change your path, right? See what is coming to you, follow paths that you didn't expect to follow, and also, do not let other forces stop you when you know that your mission is correct. There's plenty of money. There's stupid amounts of money on this planet. So much money in so many places that you can get it. You just have to figure out your path to do it. Be you, trust your mission. I mean, talk to people. And, people are the best sort of guidance if you're on the right path or not. Right. When I started the Loyalty Foundation and I told everyone the sort of the mission, every single person told me it was a good idea. They all said, but how are you going to do it? How are you going to get the money? How are you going to do this? How are you going to do that? And I was like, hold on a second. You like the idea? Is that what we need on this planet? And they were like, yes. So I was like, I will figure it out. Right. So we grew. And now we're moving in different directions. And here I am today on a podcast with the founders of Betterworld, who have made our world easier to raise money in ways that I never would have expected. When I started the foundation, I didn't even know what Betterworld was, nor did I imagine that crowdfunding and this type of thing would be as important as it was to our last year. So I think that if your mission is good, right, and it's important, and you can get people on your team, you can succeed.
Yeah, I mean, first off, just love everything that David said there. And I think that sort of entrepreneurial spirit and compassion that he showed and continues to show, and just getting out there and doing it and getting outside the comfort zone, trying new things, I think is an awesome example and is really inspiring. I think the one piece of advice that's not unrelated to that I would give is lean into storytelling. You can't in some ways, you can't over communicate to your community and your network and your donor base the why you do what you do, the results that you're having, the stories along the way, and the more you can share in as authentic a way as possible, the more you're going to, the more successful you're going to be. If you win people's hearts, you're going to win their minds and you're going to earn their dollars. And so the more nonprofits can focus on winning people's hearts, telling the authentic stories of their mission and how the dollars that they're raised are being put to use. And even in the conversations that Whit and I have had with David, hearing his passion about bringing technology and computers to underserved children and people in communities that haven't had access to that gets me excited about it, and that gets me thinking about concepts like privilege, and that my young girls, they're too young to be using computers, but it would be easy for me to take for granted that they have access to them, and what a leg up that already is. And the more you can get out and tell your story, invest in storytelling, do it the best you can. There's no limit to what you can do and the impact you can have if you lean into that. So,
and finally, Whit, what's your advice to our nonprofit listeners today?
Yeah, happy to add my 2 cents, but I should note that certainly Colin and I and the rest of the Betterworld team are look up to most of the nonprofits on our platform as the ones that are doing the hard work, the ones that have actually been in the trenches for dozens of years, doing the often thankless, laborious, time-consuming work, often with another job. So, as far as, we much more try to listen than advise, both personally and as a company. But as far as something that I think that has worked for us and worked for me personally, and it's related to David's suggestion of just starting. It has to do with expectations when you are just starting. The drive to do it excellently or have it be perfect can often get in the way of just doing a good enough first version. One of the things we like to say internally is around iterative excellence, and it's a highfalutin way to say that the first version is not going to be very good, but the second version will be slightly better, and the third version even better than that. And by the fifth time or the sixth time you've done it, all of a sudden this is it's at 100%. It's a polished, excellent, initiative or feature that you're doing. But the most important thing is just do the first version and be okay if it's not perfect. Getting out there, doing the work, and then sharing it and getting feedback, and then doing the second version is much more important than waiting and in the hopes of trying to make it perfectly the first time.
All right, great. So that about wraps it up for today's podcast. David, Colin, and Whit, it's been such a pleasure having you on and talking about different topics within fundraising and crowdfunding and technology.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having us. Really wonderful to be here.
And so on behalf of NonProfit Pro, we will see you on the next episode of the NonProfit Voice. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the NonProfit Voice. You can listen to more episodes of the NonProfit Voice at nonprofitpro.com/podcast/the-nonprofit-voice. And remember, for your convenience, you can stream any and all episodes of the NonProfit Voice on iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify.